Hello and welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem, a podcast about true crime, cryptids, the paranormal, the supernatural, everything creepy that you might want to talk about.
And anything weird.
Anything weird. That's right. I will put a warning right at the top that there may be profanity. And we are going to be talking about serial killers sometimes and true crime, especially today. So make sure that you have an appropriate listening audience with you.
That's true. It might be not suitable for work.
Correct.
Or tender ears.
Or tender ears.
Or curtain climbers. Or children.
Crotch goblins.
Yes.
Don't worry, we have some of those, so we can say it.
We do. So, my name is MB Partlow. I'm half of this podcast. I feel like the weaker half right now.
Not today.
Not today, Satan.
Not today.
I am an unpublished writer, ne'er-do-well, and that's all I have to say today.
I am Shannon Lawrence. I am a published author, and I write horror short stories mostly. And what else? I don't even know what to say about myself today. We're recording this the day after Halloween and after the time change and all that good stuff. So hopefully we actually make sense and can be real human beings on this.
We can present that facade anyway.
My cats are really happy to be able to be outside today because they weren't allowed to go outside on Halloween, especially because we have 2 black cats. But still, yes. I don't let cats outside on Halloween. Or usually the week of Halloween, but everybody kept letting them out anyway because there's 2 teenagers and a grown man in this house. And usually it's him that lets them out. Yesterday, they just followed us around like little piranha all day, yes, trying to convince us to let them outside.
Did I tell you yesterday I had to work, so I wore my favorite costume. I dressed as a deviled egg.
Oh, that's right.
I love it. It's the easiest costume in the world. So the devil horns and the devil tail and a big white t-shirt with a yellow oval on the front of it with little red glitter glue to be the paprika.
Nice.
So I was, of course, finishing it right before I went to work. So I got to work. I'm like, I can't touch anything because my paprika's wet. And my boss, bless his heart, is just like,
all right.
Okay.
He's like, yeah, whatever at this point. Whatever
really?
You say to me.
My day, it's always a good day when I say something that makes him just cover his face because he doesn't want to laugh out loud at whatever I have just said. And he's frequently telling me he wishes I would open up more and be able to speak my mind.
Yeah, that's a problem for you.
Did you do anything special yesterday?
I grumpily cleaned my house because I'm going somewhere in a couple days and it was the only day I had to do it. So on my holiday, I cleaned my house and I was very grouchy about that. And then actually last night we played, what is it? It's Phasmophobia. Yeah, which is the fear of ghosts. It's actually, but it was a game that we got off Steam where everybody but me is on. So my kids were super excited because mom had a Steam account.
Ooh.
They're like, you have a Steam account? And I'm like, okay.
I don't have one, but I know what it is.
Okay. Well, there you go. I have one now. Yes, because Thing 2 used to,
yes.
Yeah, play on
Thing
Steam.
2 still does.
Okay. Yeah.
I think.
Anyway, it's ghost hunting. It's a game about ghost hunting. And, that first person, whatever, that you're looking out of your eyes, not looking at the character that is you. And that was good. That was fun. So the 4 of us played that together and we had our own private game. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have to deal with other randos on there. And it was great. I scared the hell out of my daughter. I tried to scare my husband because I've lived the first game. My husband was the only one who died. Second game, I died. And so what happens is if you start hearing a heartbeat really loud, the thing is it coming at you specifically? Because your lights start to flicker and stuff like that. So you know that the presence is there.
I've watched Supernatural. I get it.
Okay. You have to guess what kind of ghost it is. So that's part of your mission.
Oh, man.
So you have these objectives to cross off. And then it's things like, this one is a banshee, right? And so it has these 3 things that'll work. So you have what is it? The sensors, it's not EMP, it's something else.
Yes,
EMF.
I know what you mean. Yes.
Okay, EMF. And then there's ghost writing, so you could have a notebook. And so all this stuff. And so you find out what it responds to. So if it ghost writes, it's one of these 3 ghosts or whatever. And then, you narrow it down. But in the meantime, every little once in a while it haunts you. And like in the house we went in, the doors shut around you and lights get turned off, but you can turn on the lights, and yeah, so it was fun. But yeah, I died in the second one, and then you're just there and you're looking at your body and you're just listening to everybody else play around you.
Can you not become a ghost yourself?
You basically are, but you can't go haunt anybody.
Oh, well,
and you can't go. I can watch them when they're in my vicinity, but that's it. Well,
so, whoever made this game, I have some improvements to suggest.
I would like you to do this. But yeah, so I snuck downstairs. But unfortunately, my husband, who's incredibly jumpy, and I scare him all the time without trying when he's down there working on stuff, he had himself angled so he could see, right? When I came down the steps. Yes. So I didn't scare him. But then I went to my daughter's room and started recording before I went in. Well, then my husband had his headphones on because we all had to have them on. Mm-hmm. And so he didn't hear that I scared her. So then he died after me, and then he went and scared her. And I was like, that's not fair. Now go scare your son.
Did you see, there was something on Facebook today. It was not Freddie. It was one of with the hockey mask. Jason. Dancing with the jumpsuit.
Oh, yeah.
And he's got the little amplifier, the little speaker, and there's a kid standing across the street from him dancing with him, like mimicking his moves.
Are they breaking off?
But the kid, even though the kid's like 8, he reminds me of Savannah when she was young because he's thin and he has those flexible limbs that looks like they could just...
Gumby.
Yes, he's just flailing. It's hilarious. I can't believe you haven't seen it.
No, I haven't seen that one. And Savannah is my daughter, and she is Gumby.
Yes.
She fell once and kicked herself in her own head from behind. That's how flexible she is. Her feet went right back up. Her entire back arched, and she kicked herself in her head. See, I still laugh about it. And what's terrible is I laughed about it that day. Well, but she was fine.
When you showed me the video of her doing the indoor...
Oh, yeah, the...
Indoor skydiving.
Yeah.
And she's just... flopping around like a leaf in the wind.
The dude's trying to hold her like, I don't know where to grab. Yeah, it's like she doesn't have bones. It's amazing.
It is.
I want her to do yoga. She could be more flexible.
She would end up tied in a knot.
She would. She could probably be in Cirque.
Probably.
Except if she trained.
Going bankrupt. So.
I know. And apparently badly.
Have you heard of... the new, I don't know if it's new. It's new to me. It's on Amazon Prime. It's a new Nick Frost, Simon Pegg project. I think it's called Truth Seeker or something like that.
Oh.
And Nick Frost, it's flippin' hilarious. Well, yeah, Nick Frost. So yeah. It's Simon Pegg. Simon Pegg has the worst wig in the world on. It's just, and he plays the office manager. And Nick Frost is a cable repairman. Troubleshooter, and he's being assigned a new partner, and of course he doesn't want a partner, and I'm like, what is this, a cop movie? So, and Simon Pegg is his boss, so he goes out and he's not only a internet troubleshooter, he's a ghost hunter and truth seeker. So it's just it's a little bit scary in parts because they've got this ghost, and you see that there's a piece with this woman, and you're like, what did that have to do with any of the rest of the show? But eventually it's like, okay, eventually it comes around. I have the patience of a gnat.
Yes, so do I.
So, but it was very amusing, and it's sort of it. I only watched 2 because I had already watched my Halloween viewing. I wanted to watch Halloween, which I don't own.
Okay.
So the only place I could find it, if I didn't want to pay for it...
I thought everybody owned it.
No. But the only place I could find it without paying for it had commercial breaks, and I had not the patience for that.
Nobody does commercials anymore. That's wrong.
Because it stopped it like in the middle of a scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I went...
Well, yeah, the ones that do it now, if it's the streaming things that do it does. It just stops. It's not at a commercial break. It's not somewhere that TV stations used to do. Yeah, no.
So I watched Cabin in the Woods.
Yay! I watched Halloween, and then I watched the more recent Halloween after that. The one with Jamie Lee Curtis came back and her daughter is in it.
The one that we saw in the theater. Mm-hmm. I laughed a lot at that. Not as much as I did at Cats.
Or Winchester.
Oh, I wish I could have laughed at that.
It was not good.
No.
It's not good.
I was like, wow. Helen Mirren, what were you thinking?
I don't know. That's the most mind-blowing part.
Yes.
So, did you put out candy yesterday?
No, I did not. I just inhaled it.
Oh.
I ate the spree. Not the spree, the Skittles. Oh, fuck.
I did actually put them out in separate little baggies.
Oh, that was nice.
Yeah.
Did people take them?
We had a lot of trick-or-treaters yesterday. That's the problem. That was part of the problem. I was depressed yesterday because it was super nice. So normally I would have sat out front.
Yeah.
I would have had my books out because we do trick-or-treat every year. And yeah, so we put out candy, but I didn't sit outside. Then I thought about it. I don't know. I was like, I can sit up here and put the candy at the end of the driveway, and then we're still out there kind of waving to people, but it was sad.
I didn't know who was going to be out, if kids in our neighborhood were going to be out, and you had to put on Nextdoor, the app, that you were going to have candy, and I was like,
really?
It's just too much effort.
Oh.
I'll just eat the candy, leave the porch light off.
I just bought ours yesterday. I think on sale already. Like, yay!
2 weeks ago, I went into the store looking for some Halloween things, and it was like Halloween was shoved onto one shelf, and it was all Christmas.
Yeah, I know. But it's been like that. Like, we went to Big Lots, and there were
Yes.
Yeah, there was a ton of Christmas already, and I was like, really, you guys? Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Already last night, my son played a Christmas song. He was like, are you ready? Because they like to harass me because I don't like Christmas. What they don't understand is that makes me like it even less. I go into it, and I'm like, I'm not going to have a bad attitude about Christmas this year. And then my husband today said, time to put up the Christmas tree. And I was like, yep, everybody's going to die. Every single one of you, you're already making me grumpy about Christmas, and therefore I can't have a good attitude about it. So you're the ones who make me hate it.
Yeah. It's too early.
Ugh.
I remember being in the store one Halloween. I think it was the day after. I went in to buy decorations or discount candy or something. And it could have been either. It's 50-50
I do go in when it's on sale, and I'm like, I can use this at an author signing that we don't have anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But I heard this woman, this little girl, she wasn't little, she's like 10 years old, whining to her mother, we have to take the Halloween decorations down. And the woman said, don't worry, honey, we'll put up the Christmas tree tomorrow.
Ew.
And I was like, it hasn't even been fucking Thanksgiving yet. Give turkey a chance.
Give turkey a chance. I know, I said, you can play Thanksgiving songs all you want now that it's November 1st. There are no Thanksgiving songs. Well, there is one by Adam Sandler.
And there is Alice's Restaurant. Oh, can I tell my Alice's Restaurant story?
Go ahead. No.
So, thing two is in college. She's in a college class. It's a history class. And so her professor comes in and he plays for them Alice's Restaurant. So, if you're not familiar with it, just look it up. Yeah, Arlo Guthrie, Alice's Restaurant. It's a very long song. So Nikki, being Nikki, sings along to the whole thing. And her professor looks at her and goes, how the hell do you know this song?
I have a mother.
And she goes, we play it at our house every Thanksgiving. And he goes, why? It's a Vietnam protest song. And she goes, yes, that takes place on Thanksgiving Day. And he goes, well, alrighty then.
Okay.
But we do. We play that song every Thanksgiving and sing along. And
people asking, why do you, I get that all the time. Well, why do you know this show? Well, because of parents who are the right age, and I watched things with them.
Yeah.
Listened to things with them. I don't know why that's so confusing.
I don't either.
Well, we kind of talked about TV shows. So is there any movies, TV shows you watched recently?
I'm looking at, I have to make notes. I watched Bad Hair.
Oh, yay.
Although you should have warned me about the scene where she's getting the weave. That grossed me out.
It's harsh.
That was the only bad scene, really, in the movie. But it completely grossed me out. Because you know how I am. I don't like it. Blah. Yeah. So, and I've been recommending it to everybody.
Good.
So,
yeah.
Because it was good.
Get out the indie films.
Yes.
I watched The Selling. Speaking of, I think these are indie films. The Selling on Amazon Prime. And it's a horror comedy. And it's this real estate agent who gets stuck with this haunted house.
I'm writing it down.
There's this great montage in there of him trying to sell the house and just finally embracing that he's going to and bleeding walls. It's fantastic.
He could sell it to us.
Right? Like, all right, I'm interested. It's fine. And then, what was the other one I watched with that? Oh, Moose.
What is Moose? Because Veronica was talking about that.
It's a killer moose, but it's like a supernatural moose. And it's, so that one's, like, the selling has comedy, but Moose obviously is just patently absurd the whole way through, you know. So, two different kinds, but if people like horror comedies, those are great. And that was also on Amazon Prime. So basically, I'll just get stuck on one of the streaming things and keep going through all the movies that come up next. So then I watched Solo. I think it was called Solo, and that one was that was not comedy. That was just it was psychological horror, kind of almost with a little slasher aspect to it. But yeah, where this girl is going to be a camp counselor, and something they do with the new camp counselors is they take them across on a boat to this little island nearby, and they have to stay there alone overnight and check off a certain list of things. But she's not on the island alone.
Of course.
Yes. And it's one of those where you don't know who is an ally and who's not. And what I liked about it is she was actually smart. She tried to solve the problem in smart ways.
Instead of just running around screaming with her boobs flopping around.
Like, they incorporated the cell phone, of course, no signal, right?
Of course.
But she's trying to solve that problem in some creative ways.
Did she climb a tree?
She swims. She puts it in a plastic bag, seals it in a plastic bag, and presets her text to try and send it to another counselor.
Brilliant.
And she swims out into the water as far as she can, keeps checking it so that she can hit send if she has a signal. That's smart.
That is.
And I was like, good girl. You know, so often I'm like, oh, just die already. You're stupid. Once they're repeatedly stupid, they've lost me, and then all I want is them to get shivved.
Yep.
So, yeah. That's it. And we're watching The Boys, but we're only 2 episodes into the second season. So.
I haven't started watching that yet.
We waited until they were all on so that we could binge watch if we wanted, but it is a pretty heavy show, so you don't necessarily binge watch it.
It is. It had a really horrifying scene in the first season that we talked about, and I was just like, I feel scarred by that. It was so
It has shocking moments.
It does. I mean, well, in the beginning, when the guy's girlfriend is killed, I mean, he's walking along holding her hand, and then all of a sudden, she's gone, except for her hand.
Except a cloud of her blood in her hand. Yeah. It was fantastic. And that was in the previews, so it's not even a...
Yes. That's the setup, so...
Right. So, but yeah, just like that. There's little moments like that where you're just like, oh, holy shit, they just did that.
Yep.
They just did that.
And have you read anything good?
I finished Barb Nicholas's Ambush, which was her 3rd of the 4 for her Sydney series, but I had accidentally read them out of order. And now I'm switching Mindy, is it Kaling? Mm-hmm. From The Office, and
she had her own show.
Yeah. Well, what was it? Her name is in the show. The Mindy Project. Okay. And she had a series of, I guess, it's almost like little novella-sized things, but several of them came out in the same day. I didn't realize it wasn't a full novel, right? So I had bought one, pre-bought it, and it came in, so I read that yesterday. Super brief about her having social anxiety disorder. I was like, I identify with everything, and I would like to meet you so we can not talk together and sit awkwardly in a room. But yeah, so I read that really quickly yesterday, and I started a Tim Dorsey to have something a little lighter, because I finished Clive Barker's Books of Blood too, which I've been reading for months because it's 3 volumes. So I would read some, read something else, read some.
Tim Dorsey's a good palate cleanser.
I figured, I was like, I need a little comedy. And then I don't know if I'm taking my Kindle when I go to New Orleans or not. So I don't know what I'll be reading there yet. So I don't know. What about you?
I meant to talk about this last time. I forgot. It's a book called, the title is, and forgive me because it's translated from the Korean, so I will probably get the names wrong, and I apologize. Kim Ji-young, born 1982, is the title.
Okay.
And it's by Cho Nam-ju. Again, apologies. I hope I don't offend anybody. It is really, really chilling in a very small way. It's this woman who, and she was born in 1982, and she starts speaking. She starts like channeling other women. Like she starts speaking like her mother at one point, like sounding like her voice changes, her mannerisms change, and she started talking like a woman her husband had known before they met. It was a woman she had never met. So they're like, she's having some kind of breakdown. So then you've got this very kind of clinical presentation of her life from when she was born and the family she was born into and her parents and this whole thing. And it pays off. And you kind of, and it's a very short book, but in the middle of it, I was kind of like, where are we going with this? And it pays off in like the last 2 pages. It pays off in a way that just smacks you in the face.
Okay.
So it was very good.
Was it a book club read or?
No, it was, Joe gave it to me for our anniversary.
Okay.
Maybe.
I've pre-ordered Becky Clark's Puzzling Inc. for book club.
Oh, good.
I think I'm going to have to read that pretty fast.
It's a fairly quick read. I'm debating whether I should read it or not because I beta read it. So, like, I know what happens, but there is something about seeing the final product.
Yeah. You'd be like, I helped make this. I was part of this.
And I read a YA. It's Uprooted by Naomi Novik.
I know the name. Not the title, but
it was pretty good. It was pretty good. It was a lot of twists, a lot of good action. It kept the story, revving right along. The only aspect of it I didn't like was the whole magic penis. She can't fully realize all of her power or be a full human being until she fucks the man who's 4,000 years older than she is.
Ew.
Right? Right? It's the same question I had with Twilight.
Yeah.
If he's 124 and she's 17, what the fuck do they have in common? Obviously I know what his interest is, but it's like, what do you talk about afterward?
Yeah, you would think it would be super boring to talk to a 17-year-old girl if you were hundreds of years old or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, is this all you think about? I was in wars.
Right now, I could see her going, so I have this history test coming up.
Right?
Tell me what it was like as a first-hand. I have to write a paper. Tell me what it's about. So anyway, but it was really, that's just a problem. That's a personal problem I have. But otherwise, I thought it was really good.
Okay. Well,
shall we?
Yeah. I guess I went first on the first one last time, so I think it's my turn to go first.
Go ahead.
I guess.
I don't care. We both have our notes at the ready.
Yeah. So we decided for this one that we're going to do the next couple on places we've lived. So even though I was born in California, Oregon was really home because I moved to Oregon when I was 7 months old. So mine is Oregon. And it's a personal one, but we'll talk about that in a second. So my references, I always have a list because I go look at a billion things because there's always one more bit of information. I didn't even know there was this Unsolved Mysteries Wiki. You can go there and look up the episodes from the original series. Yeah. Yeah. I was so hard not to get sucked into that.
Yes.
The Charley Project, My Life of Crime blog, Murderpedia, of course, which is where I went first, and then I went out from there. An article from the Oregonian, Inmates Plea Officially Closes Decades-Old Salem Murder, October 18th, 2012, by Tom Hallman Jr. I don't know why that was so hard to say. Salem News, Suspect Arrested, and 25-Year Disappearance of Sherry Irely, December 18th, 2007, by Tim King, Spokane Chronicle, and The Word. So, yeah, it's actually real stuff. Wait till next episode when I'm doing cryptids, and you'll see what those references look like compared to actual newspapers. Okay, so this one's personal. I've done this. I'm going to talk about Oregon serial killer William Scott Smith. And it's personal because my mom knew him as Scotty.
Oh, God.
This is the first I've actually given his name out in the times that I've talked about.
I don't think I've ever heard you say his name.
Well, because I got a few surprises. Well, I got one additional surprise when I looked him up. So I think that he's not going to get out ever in our lifetimes. Good. So I finally figured I would give out his name. My mom was friends with his older sister, Vicky. And so she was around him. She'd play over at their house and stuff like that. And he was the little brother. I'm going to first tell you what happened with my mom and him. Okay. I don't have a ton of information because it's not something she's ever talking about and I think that makes sense. Who would want to talk about this? I don't dig too much. So when I was little, my mom worked at Lancaster Mall Theater in Salem, and it has a new name now, and I couldn't remember for the life of me what it is. But there is a theater there still, and it's its own brand. But it used to be Lancaster Mall Theater, attached to Lancaster Mall. My mom was working there, and I was there with her all the time watching movies, and one day she ran into...
So how old were you at this time?
Here's the thing, I don't know exactly what year it is.
He
killed between 81 and 84.
Okay.
I was born in 77. So this incident happened at some point, probably between 82 and 84. So I would have been about 5.
Wow.
4 or 5, I figure. So she ran into the mom. And so, of course, what I imagine is the mom went home and like, guess who I ran into? You know, how that happens. Yeah. Obscene phone calls started coming into my mom. Threatening phone calls, breathing, all that good stuff. So that started. And then one day, as we're going to my grandparents' farm in Turner, Oregon, which is not that far from Salem. It's out in sort of a wooded area. So we had cattle, but they were free ranging in the woods. Mm-hmm. And so we're heading out to their farm from the mall, I think. And a car bumped my mom, tried to run her off the road. She kept going. She did not pull over. And this guy's bumping her, trying to get her off the road. Well, she knows the area, of course. And this is very, like, rural, dirt road, all that good stuff. She manages to get far enough ahead of him that she pulls off into a driveway, shuts off the car so that her lights aren't on. He drives past. And by driveway, I'm talking a country driveway. So she probably wasn't even near a house, right? So, yeah, he keeps going. And ultimately, she gets to their farm. Safe, alive, whatever. I was in the car with her when this happened. Just a little girl. And
I can't even imagine how I would react if I was driving alone at night with my daughter in the back seat and somebody bumped my car.
Right.
I can't even...
Because...
That's
and I'll talk about his MO later, but that was what he did, is he would bump him, and then he'd be like, oh, well, let's get out and look at the damage. And then he would kidnap them, rape them, and murder them. So that's what he was trying to do. He was like, yeah, of course, go after her. And she's, you know, she's talked about, she was like, I don't know, I don't remember, maybe I was mean to him or something. It's like, nah, that's not how it happened. He was targeting. Yeah, he just happened to know you. For all anyone knows, he had a little crush. Who knows, right? Your sister's friend. Yeah. So we lived that night because knowing this guy, he would have had no problem murdering the little girl in the car too. So the police felt that he was the one who'd been doing the harassing phone calls. And I don't know anything else about the police. I don't know. There's some stuff later on. I'm like, is this my mom they're talking about or somebody different? So I just don't know because she didn't want to talk about it. So let's talk about William Scott Smith. He was a high school dropout, and he had just a shopping list of petty crimes ahead of time. He was convicted in 1978, Silverton, Oregon. He was convicted for menacing. 1978, again, convicted of second-degree burglary in Salem, Oregon. Got a 1-year suspended sentence. 1979, acquitted of the charge of second-degree sexual assault, but his partner in the assault went to jail for the crime. So I don't know how he got... I don't understand why he didn't.
That he'd already
Maybe he was younger than the other guy.
But he'd already had charges against him. Okay.
Yeah. In 1981, Boise, Idaho, he was convicted for indecent exposure. So we all see what this is adding up to, right? Mm-hmm. With serial killers. In 1982, he was questioned by the Ada County Sheriff's Office concerning an unsolved murder of a 14-year-old girl named Lisa Chambers. And he fled back to Salem, Oregon from Idaho then because... you know, they were looking at him for this crime.
And we know they're not very far apart.
No. But I did look up this Lisa Chambers, and actually in 2007, they were able to examine the DNA, and they connected her murder with a man named Wesley Allen Tuttle.
Oh, so he didn't...
So he did not do that one. Because I did look that one up separately, like, oh, is this another one it could be? Was it solved? I didn't read of a conviction of Tuttle, but they were they were convinced enough they put it out to the news, right? So, yeah, DNA connected him. He lived down the street, and he had been a person of interest earlier. His first murder victim was Rebecca Darling, a 21-year-old woman who worked at a 24-hour Circle K convenience store. In the early morning hours of February 19th, 1984, she disappeared between 3:20 a.m. and 3:50 a.m. And they know that because there was somebody who came into the store at 3:20 a.m. and somebody who came in at 3:50 and she wasn't there. They found her remains March 25th next to the Little Pudding River, which I think is a little tributary of the Willamette.
Okay.
She'd been strangled with rope. I found a post, actually, from a resource I'm not going to give out, that a woman who had worked at Circle K with Darling, and she said that night they'd been short-staffed, so they'd been called in, and they'd been given the choice, which one are you going to work at? And this woman had chosen the other one.
Oh.
So it could have been her.
Oh.
Yeah. And obviously this was before they had security cameras at most places, right. All that good stuff. So she was removed from the store. I mean, he walked in there and got her, apparently. And one of the things that was super sad about this, I mean, it's already incredibly sad, is that when they were children, her little brother had been hit by a car and killed. So both of these people, her parents lost both kids.
That's terrible.
Young. It's horrific.
I can't even imagine.
No. And yeah, I found a site where people who knew all of these people had gathered, you know, and that's where I heard this story and a couple others about them. And it was just the parents of Rebecca Darling weren't part of it. So I have no idea what happened to them after all this. So then the incident that actually got him busted by the police was the death of Catherine Redmond. She was an 18-year-old co-ed. She disappeared after a frat party. So the last she was seen was 2:15 a.m. Okay. And she borrowed a roommate's car. And that night, April 7th, 1984, the car was found abandoned, still running, door open.
Shit.
Yeah. Her body was subsequently found April 11th, 4 miles from where Darling had been found. So again, in brush by the Little Pudding River. She'd been asphyxiated and there was evidence of object rape. And I believe I believe he also raped them all, but I don't remember. This reminds me of Son of Sam. Here's how he got busted. His vehicle had been cited, a vehicle matching his description, in the area where her car was found. And he'd called a tow truck because he'd gotten his car stuck in a ditch right there. Somehow. I looked and there wasn't ever a story of him saying what happened, you know. Like, here's how I drove into a ditch after I murdered a woman and ditched her body. So, police went and talked to him because he had these petty crimes on there. And he was busted. Now, before he pled guilty, another woman in Salem had reported a car like his hitting her and trying to get her out of her car. He bumped her, they pulled over, he came up and knocked on her window, and he was a big man at that point. And he was like, come on out, we'll talk about it. And she said, no. Let's drive to this gas station up here, and we'll get out there where it's safe. And so he took off. So that's why she lived. He wasn't terribly into putting a lot of effort into stuff, was he?
No.
He probably, after he lost my mom, was just like, fine, fuck it, you know, and drove away. But he knew where to find her, right? At the mall. The first time I looked him up was a few years ago. I had known the story, but I didn't have any details, and I only knew him as Scotty, because that's how Mom knew him. So I think I searched serial killer, Oregon, Willamette, and that's how I came up with him. Right? And then I sent it to her because I'm a terrible child. And I was like, is this the guy? But anyway, when I found him, I also discovered that in 2007, he admitted to a third murder from prison, already serving 2 consecutive life sentences. And that was Sherry Irely. And the thing about Sherry Irely is there's a bunch about her. For whatever reason, her disappearance had captured everybody's attention. And part of that is that her body was never found. So she was an 18-year-old woman. She worked at Domino's. And on the 4th of July, 1982, the Domino's got a phone call requesting a specific woman, which was not her, but that person wasn't working, to an address. So she got sent out to this address. Well, it didn't exist. They found her car near where it would have been. It was on, let me see what the road is, River Haven Drive, south.
So wait. So somebody called Domino's and said, hey, can you send Susie to deliver a pizza for me?
Yeah, they basically said, oh, so there's this one girl she delivered to us last time. She had a Volkswagen Bug, or it was an orange Bug or something like that. And, you know, she was super nice if you could send her out. Which, first of all, no. But it was the 80s.
I get that. Yes, I get that. But today I'm like...
No.
No.
Absolutely not. No.
You take what, of course, I'm cranky, and I would have said, you take who you fucking get. You don't
Right.
get to pick your
but
driver.
It's one thing when you're at a restaurant and somebody requests such and such waitress because you're there.
Yeah.
But to ask for a specific woman to be sent to your home, that right there is just advertising something. But they found her car, again, still running, lights on, door open, the pizzas were on the ground. The theory is that he was in this truck and he said, oh, hey, I gave you the wrong address. I'm the one who ordered the pizzas or whatever. And she got out because the pizzas were outside of the car.
So she got out to hand him the pizzas.
Absolutely. And then there was a footprint in the middle of one of the boxes. Her hat was lying on the ground because they wore the little uniform hats. Yeah.
Shit.
They find this. It was a guy coming back from a fireworks display that found the car and called it in. They said there was no sign of a struggle. I'm like, her hat laying on the ground, the car door open, that in itself is a sign of a struggle.
Yeah, the footprint in the middle of the pizza box.
Yeah, not a sign of struggle. No.
Well, there was no blood, I guess,
But yeah, when they started investigating, they found out that the address didn't exist. And by the way, this road ran along the Willamette River.
Of course.
Right. The next day, a ransom call comes into Domino's, $50,000 for the return of your girl. Like, Domino's is not going to pay. What the hell?
No.
Okay. And when they looked into it, the phone call had come from a hotel. And when they talked to them, they said there was a second person there because the person on the phone talked to somebody else about what pizzas to order and details and stuff like that through the call. So this case was on Unsolved Mysteries multiple times. And she's in the wiki. You can just look up Sherry Irely, actually. It's considered one of the more famous Salem cases. Cold case detectives realized it sounded like Smith's MO, so they visited him in prison, and they were able to get him to confess. He made a plea deal and got a third life sentence. What he did each time is that he would waive his right to a jury trial and go to the judge, and then each time he got convicted, but he'd do a plea deal, so he didn't get death, I guess. I don't know if it was on the table. I was like,
what kind of a plea deal is...
Usually it's to avoid death.
Does Oregon have the death penalty?
They did.
Okay.
Because I remember they were also like one of the last places to stop hangings.
Huh.
Yeah, but I don't know when they did. He said that he had an accomplice. Roger Nosef was the name. He gave the name and everything. They'd planned on kidnapping a different Domino's employee, the one they asked for, and holding her for ransom. So when they realized they had the wrong woman, Smith kidnapped her, took her out to his parents' property or something is what I read, and then he strangled her and threw her body in the Little Pudding River like the other two. He claims it was Nosef that called the next day with the ransom because she was already dead. There's no explanation why they didn't follow up, why he made no attempts to get the money, nothing like that. And Nosef had died a few years before this came out. The confession came out, so no charges could be pressed against him.
And there's no way to prove.
No.
Yes, it was true. No, it wasn't.
No. But it all came together. Then it made sense that he'd been talking to this other person. That's the second time he had an accomplice. Because that first one, that sexual assault thing where the guy went to jail and he didn't.
Right.
And I couldn't find that guy's name. It's not listed. So, but anyway, I found that interesting. So sometimes he worked alone, sometimes he worked with someone else. But he said Nosef had nothing to do with killing her. That was just him. Nosef wanted the money. Before Smith admitted to the crime, police had suspected a man named Daryl J. Wilson. Wilson committed suicide a few hours after being questioned by police. Though circumstantial evidence was strong, police had already decided Wilson was not guilty before Smith confessed. So they were like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. But the funny thing is, I was looking at the evidence, and I was like, I totally understand why they were looking at this guy. He claimed he didn't know her. And then after being talked to a few more times, he said he was camping the night she disappeared. But the people he was camping with, he had left the camping trip at 6:30 p.m. She disappeared, I think it was like 9-ish or something like that. I don't remember. And then he didn't get back until 5:30 in the morning or something like that. So he had this huge window where they didn't know where he was. Yeah. When they had put out the call, they'd said a green truck was seen in the area because it was the truck they used, and I don't know if it was Smith's or Nosef's, was this big green pickup with like the light bar and stuff like that.
And unobtrusive.
Right. And so this guy had a lime green pickup, and he painted it brown a few days after she disappeared. So
that's not suspicious
exactly.
at all.
So my question is, why was he acting so suspicious? Why lie and say he didn't know, or why do this?
I would imagine that he was guilty of something.
Right. And they did say he was involved in drugs.
So he may have thought it was coming down on him for some other reason.
Right. Like, you know what? Or he thought, because I've got all these other problems, they're going to find it out. They're going to think I did it. I don't know. Anyway, I just want to put that in there because I was like, dude, you really did sound guilty. No wonder they were questioning you. Then I got another surprise. Now, I had discovered this third murder, right, that Mom didn't know about, that we didn't know about. When I was looking at stuff tonight, there was a fourth.
Oh, my God.
And I only happened across it. Even Murderpedia did not have this update, which surprised me.
So who's the fourth?
Okay. So he pled guilty in 2014. The last one was 2007.
Okay.
To that fourth murder. I found information in the Salem Statesman. He pled guilty to killing 22-year-old Terry Monroe outside the Museum Tavern on Front Street on February 12, 1981. This one predated those other ones.
Oh, my God.
So Murderpedia still has his victimology listed between 82 and 84. So now we can go back to 1981.
Oh, my God.
Yep. She'd stepped out. She was there with friends. She stepped out for some air. She never came back in. So he snatched her right in front of a bar.
That's incredible.
Right? Again, he was a big guy, but good Lord.
Yeah, you think you're safe. You're there with friends. You step out to get a breath of air. Because back then, you would have needed the fresh air because you could
smoking.
Still smoke
in
bars. And wow.
Yeah. No, he grabbed her. She was found near the Willamette River, and she was strangled like the other women. That's his thing, right? It was a month after she disappeared before they found her body downstream.
Oh.
So this one it was solved by cold case detectives who started looking into it. And it's funny because when you look at the original articles, it's like 5 other disappearances in the early 80s, they figure there's no connection.
And you're like, how could there be
They
this
found her body, Willamette, strangled, same time period. What do you mean there's no connection? And I found this other article too, and it was about somebody called the Salem Sniper, which I could find nothing else about that, so it didn't go anywhere. But it listed Sherry Irely.
Ooh.
It listed Terry Monroe. And this was before he confessed to this. And it was like, here are some of the bizarre deaths, or here's some of the disappearances that happened during this time. But, and then there was a 19-year-old girl, and I tried to look her up. She disappeared from her room. And then her skeleton was found like a year and a half later or something like that. But I was like, that one sounds like it could be him. I mean, he didn't seem to be picky about where he pulled him from, but taking him out of their home, he would have had to know her probably. Anyway, I couldn't find anything, so they never solved it. They didn't say what her cause of death was, but she was a skeleton when they found her, so asphyxiation wouldn't be clear.
Not without a forensic anthropologist.
And even then, it might not. It depends.
Right.
Is the hyoid bone there? Was it broken? Did an animal break it?
Yes, and how much time are they going to spend?
They didn't.
Exactly.
Obviously.
I mean, they don't have, and I'm not saying it as, they didn't want to spend the time on it. I'm just saying you have X amount of resources to spread over.
And to be noted, this was Salem in the 80s. The Green River Killer, Ted Bundy. This is in the Golden Triangle of places that the serial killers were operating in the 80s. So these weren't the only crimes happening.
It's like the Bermuda
Triangle. And the I-5 killer during this time.
Oh.
Yeah, was doing this. Happy Face Killer, I think, was the... So, yeah. It was this vast array of women disappearing and being murdered. It's just... That's what they did then in Oregon. They presented enough evidence to the DA to press charges, and then they did interviews with him, and they finally got enough information. He once again waived his right to a jury trial, went straight to the judge, pled guilty, so he got a life sentence instead of death. He's serving those life sentences in the Oregon State Penitentiary, which, funnily enough, is between Salem and Turner. You drive past the Oregon State Penitentiary to get out there. So, at least that's what I recall correctly. It's on that highway that goes out there. My cousin is actually a prison guard there. And I've thought multiple times about being like, hey, William Scott Smith, because she's got the I-5 killer there. She's got the Happy Face killer.
Wow.
Oregon State Pen is a big one on the West Coast.
It's like Florence here.
Yeah. But I haven't asked her yet if he's there. So I'm like, hey, could you ask him some questions? But I feel like that would be a bad position to put her in. So this is why I haven't said anything like having to guard this person who went after, tried to kill her aunt and her cousin. That's a little weird.
That would be, yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't. But anyway, he has 4 life sentences, which is why I was like, All right. I think you have to serve a minimum of 20 years for each life sentence before you're up for parole. So, yeah. I was like, okay.
And it's consecutive, not concurrent.
Correct. They were consecutive. And so initially when I looked, why I wouldn't put his name out there is he only had 40 years. So, and that's not that long. He wouldn't be that old when he got out. No, in fact, he would have been up for it in the next, I think it was 84.
If he was in his 20s.
Yeah.
When he did it.
And he would have been up for parole in 4 years.
Oh, no.
So I was like, nope, not going to put it out there. I mean, my last name's different from my mom's. Her married name is different from, But obviously, if he found her to make phone calls, he found out her last name.
Right.
Because she was married, because I was born after they were married.
True.
Quite a few years after they're married. There's no wiggle room there. So...
I wasn't raising an eyebrow at your mom.
No, I know.
There was no shade throwing going on.
I was really interested in that Salem sniper thing. That was weird that I didn't find anything more because literally a mom and daughter were shot while at a gas station or something like that. A woman was shot outside of her, or no, they were in their home, I think. A woman was shot outside of the veterinary clinic she worked in. I mean, we hear about the Maryland Beltway killers all the time. And there was this random sniper. But again, I was like, and so when I looked up the Salem sniper, he was referred to as that in somebody's blog, and I was like, no. First of all, his MO is very clear.
Yeah.
It is face-to-face. It is rape and strangle. He wouldn't randomly shoot people. That's stupid. So anyway, I was confused about that, but there was nothing else. So apparently those were the only shootings that happened, and then whoever that was stopped doing it.
Maybe they were killed. Whoever was doing it was killed by one of the serial killers.
One hopes, but they were all killing women in their 20s and teens. But obviously, I think there's other victims.
Yeah.
He has never just out and admitted it. He has confessed it after being confronted with evidence. So there were, I think, 5 other at least unsolved crimes in those years.
Oh my.
Salem's the capital. It's a busy city. So I keep wondering, I mean, he was convicted in 84, 2007 he admitted to one, 2014. I'm like, hey, we're about due.
I was going to say, it's time.
If you guys could look into that, please, and find out who else he killed. Maybe see if that 19-year-old girl was part of it. But I must say, though, like, way to go cold case cops, because you know how few cold cases are solved?
Mm-hmm.
For more information, there is a documentary that was made in 2014 involving On the Case with Paul Lizon, called Kidnapped on the 4th of July. It's about Sherry Irely. Again, she was the one that took everybody's imagination. There aren't unsolved mysteries about Catherine Redmond, and, there just aren't. And you can also view the Unsolved Mysteries Wiki. And I'm sure those episodes are available somewhere. So, that was the story of William Scott Smith.
Wow.
Psycho bastard.
Well, I am going to tell you a little story about a man named Orlando Perry Dexter.
Oh, that's a fun name. Orlando.
Orlando. O-R-R-A-N-D.
Sounds like something from Star Wars, like Orlando.
It does. So so this takes place in upstate New York. So before I tell you that story, do you know April 1st, 2019, have you seen the documentary Killing Fields or heard about it?
I've heard about it.
Okay. So the subtitle is The Town That Got Away with Murder. So there was this man named Ken Rex McElroy, who was 47 years old. He was a bully, a thief, an attempted murderer. I mean, he was arrested 3 to 4 times a year.
As always.
Yeah. And he just, the whole thing about him was he just did not care.
No.
And yet, here's what stuns me. You can't see me. I'm waving my arms around, getting all worked up. He was married.
Oh, yeah. That's...
I can't imagine what redeeming quality he had.
There's so many that were like that, though, that were married, and yet they were going out like, I'm going to go to the bar with my friends, and going out and raping, murdering women and coming home, and she had no idea.
Yeah.
So that's scary.
He got out. He was out on bail. His wife was picking him up. So there was a group of 30 residents of this town, which was Skidmore, Missouri. Missouri. So there's a group of 30-ish townspeople hanging out. When he gets out, when he made bail and got out, he gets into the car with his wife, who I think it said looked in the rear view mirror and saw a rifle barrel sticking out of the crowd. And the next thing she knows, the back window shattered and her husband's dead.
Oh, wait, I know this story, but go on.
Every single person standing there in that crowd, none of them saw a thing.
I saw this on BuzzFeed Unsolved.
Yep.
Yay!
So, okay, so this was in 2019. This is not that long ago. Mm-hmm. Let's go back in time. Orlando Perry Dexter, and because I'm not as gloriously organized as Shannon, I'm going to tell you my sources as I cite them. I have, and I did not write down the name of it, my cousin years and years ago sent all of us a link to this wonderful upstate New York newspaper archive, and it goes back to the 1800s. And it might just be St. Lawrence County. I'm not sure. It might be, no, because this is Franklin County. So it's upstate New York. So one of the girls, thing one or thing two, I think it was thing one, came home one day and she had to do some genealogy project. So she's asking Joe, where was so-and-so? What was so-and-so's name? Where was he born? When did he die? And Joe's, God bless him, he's doing the best that he can, but that's not his thing. He doesn't know all that. So she turns around and starts asking me, and at that point we shared an office. So I had pulled up this website, and so I have dates, wedding dates, date of death. I can look everything up, and Joe's like, how the fuck do you know all this just off the top? I said, I don't, honey. I'm using I don't. I just put the name in and look it up. And it tells me everything you'd want to know.
The Google.
The Goog. The Goog, as Becky Clark would say.
The Goog.
So anyway, that's where when I heard about this guy, I looked up articles involving this man. And there are so many. So it starts, the first one I could find was February 24th, 1892. Oh. He had been indicted by the Franklin County Grand Jury for removing a dam on private property. Apparently,
water rights.
Well, it was
fishing.
I believe a logger had property next to his and built a dam to have the water to move the logs out. And Dexter claimed it flooded his property. So he just went in and destroyed the dam. Didn't try to work it out. Just went in and took it in his own hands. Mm-hmm. He lost his suit. So then he charged the county's district attorney with using his influence on the grand jury to get the indictment. The dam wasn't on his property. He was obviously in the wrong. He was referred to, I have so many good quotes. If you have never looked at newspapers from the late 1800s, early 1900s, you must. They are delightful. They are so florid.
I have some in my next one for the next episode.
Oh my God, they are so overwrought. He was called, quote, the most pernicious litigant ever known in the courts of Franklin County.
Pernicious.
And they referenced some trouble some years earlier with a lumber company. He was crossed paths with an ex-sheriff of Brushton and a Dr. Wardner of St. Regis Falls. These are all little towns up there. And they all had their own newspaper. So sometimes it's the Ogdensburg paper, sometimes it's... And very few of them back then had bylines. Because I would credit who wrote it if I knew. But they didn't have bylines. Part of it was his image. And I can tell you this still goes on to some extent in upstate New York. You get people from New York City. Now, for those of you who don't know, when I say New York, you think New York City, you think skyscrapers, you think Manhattan, you think the Bronx. New York City is just a tiny little pinprick, land-wise, of New York State. New York State is huge. Mm-hmm. And the North Country, as it's fondly referred to, is up on the Canadian border. People up there really don't have a lot in common with people from New York City. So there's this stigma of all the people from New York City who are rich and they're lawyers, and they come up and they buy up land. And then they take all the hunting rights and the fishing rights and they put up no trespassing signs and don't let anybody use the land that they've been using for years, for generations in sometimes. And also there are people, one of the Rockefellers was around when all this was happening, and he apparently actual threats had been made on Rockefeller's
I'm sure
life, and he just was like, I don't care. I'm like, if I had that much
I have
money,
a shotgun.
I probably wouldn't care either. 1892, the district attorney was exonerated. In 1894, he sued ex-sheriff Dunstan for malicious prosecution. Right? August of 1894. So he had sued the town of Waverly over his property taxes. And they were like, no, sorry. You have all these. I mean, because it wasn't just he had a hunting camp. He had a lodge, and he had a guest house, and he had a barn, and he had a garage, and it wasn't a garage, it would have been a stable back then, and a carriage house. And it's like, yes, if you're going to build all these things, you're going to be charged taxes on them. There was an article that came out in 2016 called Murder in the Adirondacks, Mysterious Cold Case Remains. And I found it on Northern New York Biz website, written by Neil Burdick, who happens to be a St. Lawrence University alum. Same as me. And I'm gonna read you a little piece because it's just kind of sets the tone. It really. So I've told you a little bit about Orlando here, and he was just suing everybody left and right. So September 19th of that year dawned cold, gray, and still across the northern Adirondacks. Just before noon, Orlando Perry Dexter left his 16-room mansion on the shore of what had been East Branch Pond. He renamed it Dexter Lake.
Oh, all right.
In honor of himself. Hitched one of his fine horses to one of his fleet of carriages and departed up the lane that would take him off his 7,000-acre estate and onto Blue Mountain Road. He was going, depending on which rumor one chooses to believe, to the train station at Santa Clara to pick up some freight, or to the post office there, or to distant Nickelville to finalize a land transaction that would have put a local timber dealer out of business.
Yeah.
So it's painting quite a rosy portrait. Mm-hmm. So he was 48 years old on this day. He's driving his wagon off of his property, and he's shot in the back. He rounds a corner. There's one gunshot. He falls off. He's dead. Dead before he hits the ground. And that's it. There are no witnesses. No one has ever claimed to know anything about what happened. The thing is, he never married. So there's no family. He has no immediate family. But his father was still alive. So his father, who was absolutely outraged at the local bumpkin police force, hired Pinkertons.
Yeah.
Which we talked about last time or 2 times ago. Pinkertons were hired for the axe murder in Colorado Springs. But the type of rifle used was common. Mm-hmm. You know, it was something that everybody had. Everybody questioned had an alibi that was backed up by someone else, and nobody would talk. It was referred to as a popular murder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that was okay. He had bought up all kinds of land around Santa Clara and St. Regis Falls. Land that was used for hunting, fishing, and logging, and then had plastered it all with no trespassing signs. And he had put other loggers out of business because he would buy up the land that surrounded them. So they were on a little island with no way to get the lumber out. Okay. Now, I think, and I can't remember whether I was talking to somebody here in Colorado or if it was in New York, there have been developed right of use laws. Like if you've had a driveway going across the corner of someone's property for 50 years, they can't all of a sudden close it off to you. So, but that was not happening back then. No. Oh, he blocked popular waterways again, so people couldn't use it for boating, but they also couldn't use it for log driving. Right. Which was a big industry up there.
He was a douche canoe.
He was a total douche canoe. There was also a rumor, which I found no substantiation for, that he had impregnated one of his serving girls who was the daughter of a prominent local family. Ugh. There's absolutely nothing to substantiate that. What's really hilarious to me is that after this happened, there was a big war of words. So the papers in New York City are reporting it with one flavor, and the papers in upstate New York are firing right back with a totally different flavor. New York City papers are talking about how there's a murderer on the loose, and it's not safe to be in upstate New York. And in upstate New York, they're like, fuck off.
It's fine. We're all fine.
It's fine. We're all fine here. We're fine. How are
Look
you?
Away.
Now, so interestingly, it was reported in the papers that the Franklin County Sheriff said he was sure he knew who did it. He may have said he was morally certain. Oh. He knew who did it.
That sounds serious. That's very certain.
Right? That's
morally certain is 110%.
Yes. Then he said an arrest was imminent. And then it just disappeared. It just disappeared from the paper. You didn't see anything.
He found out and he was like, yeah, that's legit.
Or somebody dropped a word in his ear and said no. So at the time, Dexter's father offered a $5,000 reward for leading to the capture of the killer. And nobody took him up on it. And in those days, that was a lot of money.
Yeah, but he had cost the town, townspeople so much money that it was worth more for him to be gone.
Well, it did go up to $10,000 at one point. And when the father died in 1910, he bequeathed $1.4 million to the conclusion of the case. So even after his father died, there would be a little announcement in the paper, $10,000 reward. And that went on for a few years.
Okay.
And I was like, so whoever he hired as a lawyer took his job seriously.
Good.
Now, it is said, in his defense, Dexter's defense, or Rando's defense, he did build roads up there. He donated money to build roads. He donated to the schools, and he did employ a lot of local people. But he also crossed fucking everybody who crossed him. Sued every fucking buddy. And then if he didn't win, he would take it to the next highest court. Mm-hmm. Just, oh my God. When we're off the air, I'm going to tell you who that sounds like. Oh. It sounds like someone known to my family, but that's all I'm going to say right now. I don't want to be arrested for slander. Okay, I'm like, where am I? Oh, so here was what I thought was interesting. If you're unfamiliar with upstate New York, that's where the Adirondack Park is. And the Adirondack Park was established in 1892, and it covers 6 million acres.
Wow.
It is the largest park in the contiguous United States. It's 9,375 square miles. There was an Adirondack Association, which was made up of rich men from New York City who owned huge estates in upstate New York, a lot of it being in the Adirondack Park. Now, I don't know how strict it was back then, but right now, it's about all you can do without getting permission from the Adirondack Park Agency is change your toilet paper. Okay. I mean, you can't paint your house, you can't build a garage, it's really strict. So the millionaire members of this Adirondack Agency were publicly stated that they were greatly disturbed by the violence against one of their own. But here's the interesting part. They refused to act as an organization. Mm-hmm. They refused to say anything as an organization. They would do whatever they could individually. If they were questioned, if they could help, they would do it. But as an organization, they would not do anything.
Okay.
And I found that very, very interesting. The 60 members of the agency owned 780,000 square miles.
It was them. They're the Illuminati.
You know.
They had something like an Illuminati thing going.
And they had feuds between these men and the local hunting guides because they would come up and post all this land so you could no longer cross the land to get to the good hunting spots or, be the hunting guides and fish and hunt the land yourself.
Yeah.
And that feud in some respects still goes on.
I'm sure.
So I remember hunting it because it's just now. This is hunting season.
Yeah,
in upstate New York,
we've got posted no trespassing, no hunting on our property.
Yeah, you have a nice chunk, but you don't have 700,000 acres.
No, it's not 24 and a half. That's much less.
So in October of 1903, Dexter's estate was sold. It was in 1908 that the reward went up to $10,000 and it continued to be posted in the papers. What I think is interesting, after the reward went up to $10,000, a man in the fall of 1908 came forward and claimed to have been an eyewitness. He said his employer, another rich man, he never said who, he said his employer shot Dexter and then, because this was years after the murder, and then had this man hide the gun on Dexter's property, and then several years later impregnated this man's daughter and paid him to leave the state. The whole thing was complete, this is where I wrote, complete bollocks.
Complete bollocks.
It was in the same newspaper. It was on the same newspaper page. This whole article about eyewitness found, blah, 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 blah. And then over on the right hand, that's on the left-hand side. Over on the right-hand side, it was like, totally recants his story. He was like, he wasn't even in New York when it happened. So to this day, nobody, and this happened near Malone, New York. To this day, nobody has ever come forth and admitted it or said they knew who did it. This is an instance of, again, 100 years before what happened in Skidmore, Missouri.
Yeah.
The whole town, the whole county just zip. They don't say anything. They can keep their mouths shut.
Yeah, that's, on the one hand, that's that's good for the town, right? But then it makes me think of, like, you know, lynchings.
Yeah.
When you go to that place, it's the whole town bands together, and it's kind of terrifying. Like, oh, yeah, we can all keep this from everybody. We all work in conjunction to do this stuff, and it tends to be a very rural, small town.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scary.
What I think is amazing, because some of these towns recognize, like when he was going to Nickelville, I had cousins who lived in Nickelville. I never heard this story when I was growing up, and I would think it would still be talked about, or you would hear mention of it. I don't ever remember hearing about it.
Close-lipped.
And now there's nobody up there. Maybe I'll see if there's any. I'll start asking, hey, did you ever hear about?
Yeah, that's what you got to do, because then people are like, oh yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, I knew about that.
Blah, blah. Okay, well, I would have liked to have heard about it. Don't you know I'm weird?
I do have a friend who grew up in Malone. Perhaps I will ask her.
There you go.
That was where the Franklin County Fair is held.
I'm like, okay.
That is my experience with Malone. It wasn't close to where, it was the other side of my cousins, so we didn't go there a lot.
I'm trying to remember where the Oregon State Fair was. Like, if it was actually in Salem or what. We used to go there. I stayed in my grandparents' RV with them there one year because it was a big thing for them. So that's where I went with them right before we moved to Maryland, actually. And then my grandma gave me Lady Hawk on VHS.
Ooh.
Yeah. So my grandma was
Nice.
big on... She had whatever it was, HBO, Showtime, whatever was available then. And we had all these tapes that she would just record off of. I think I had The Last Unicorn recorded off of whatever it was. But she actually bought me, with the slipcover, Lady Hawk as a going away present.
Nice.
Right?
Nice.
All right. Well, yours was lighter, you know?
Mine was very much lighter.
Glad we ended on that one.
Yes.
Didn't even think about ordering them that way. Like, hey, I'm going to talk about a serial killer. Why don't I go first?
I am, in essence, usually the comic relief.
There we go. Yeah.
That is my role in life.
I'll tell you the weird, dark trivia. And
I'll tell you the weird, not so dark trivia.
Did you know there are maggots that jump? Yes, you do, because you were there too.
No! We're
Still
not
love
talking about jumping
Dealing
maggots.
with the dead bodies and jumping maggots.
So, someday Shannon is going to write a story with
About
jumping maggots. And I have already told her, please do not give that to me. And say, could you print this for me?
Which is exactly what I will do. You should be suspicious because I haven't done that.
No, you haven't asked me to proof anything in a while. And I'm like, oh God, it's going to be the maggots.
Oh, no. All right. Well, that is our third episode in the can.
Woohoo!
And next time I'll be talking about Maryland cryptids. What are you talking about?
I am going to talk about... I guess it's a cross between monsters and mayhem in North Carolina, where I lived for 4 years.
Okay. Yay.
We're ready.
All right. So, y'all, keep it creepy. Check us out next time on www.mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com
or on our Facebook page, Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
And we highly encourage you to send us an email with your own stories. And you can see we run the gamut. If it's...
Yes.
Icky, ooky, creepy, kooky, weird. We want to hear it. So send that to, to mysteriesmonstersmayhem@gmail.com. And there's also a form on our website that you can submit your stories. So we look forward to talking with you later.
Yes. Bye.